Hello fellow followers. Exodus, barefoot on the hot sand, he stares into the burning flame and haggles with a god whose name he could not say. That's the entry for Exodus in the shortest commentary of the whole Bible, which I absolutely love, and I'm now going to shamelessly nick for the first line of each video. Go and see the link down there, it's fantastic. Anyway, baby Moses in a basket, lots of plagues, the parting of the Red Sea, and the 10 Commandments. It's time for the book of Exodus. The book of Exodus really starts hundreds of years after the book of Genesis. The descendants of Abraham are now a whole nation called the Israelites, and they live as slaves in Egypt. But they're getting far too numerous for Pharaoh's liking, so Pharaoh orders all the baby boys to be thrown into the river Nile and killed. Kill the children, kill them all, ha 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 ha, kill them. But Moses' mum comes up with a cunning plan and makes a basket and floats Moses down the river Nile in this basket. Interesting fact for you, the word basket in Exodus 2:3 is the same word as the word ark, as in Noah's Ark. In other words, right at the beginning of the story, we get this indication that just as God planned to rescue Noah's family and the animals through Noah, so now God is planning to rescue his people through Moses. Moses is found by Pharaoh's daughter and is taken into her care. As he grows up, he eventually murders someone and has to run away in order to not get caught for it. Many years later, Moses is tending his father-in-law's sheep when he comes across the burning bush, which is a stupid name for it. It's a stupid name. Why do we call it the burning bush? The whole point is that it wasn't burning. Exodus 3:2, it was on fire, but it wasn't burning up. Stop calling it a burning bush. It's not burning. That's the whole point. Okay. I need to calm down. It's okay. It's okay. Just stop calling it a burning bush! Anyway, God tells him to go and rescue his people from Egypt, and at that point Moses asks God his name, and the answer is really weird. It's a name that is repeated over 6,000 times in the Bible. It is normally translated Lord, capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, but of course it wasn't written in the English, it was written in the Hebrew, and there it's essentially 4 letters, Y, H, V, H, or Yod, Hey, Va, Hey. Some argue that it's basically just breathing sounds and that God's name is basically unpronounceable, which is interesting in itself, that God's name could be the sound of breathing. And so you could argue that the only reason we humans are alive is because we repeat the name of God, which you must admit gives a sudden perverse pleasure when you think that someone like, for example, Professor Richard Dawkins is only alive because he repeats the name of God. Others say that the name should be translated I am who I am and argue that this signifies God permanent. But the original Hebrew simply doesn't say that. It's written in what's called the imperfect tense. In other words, it has a ring of the future about it. I will be what I will be. Essentially, Moses says, what's your name? And God says, you'll find out. The only way who you can know who I am is by experiencing me, by being in relationship with me. The name emphasizes God's dynamic nature. He is, in his very essence, relational. Right, that was all quite heavy. Let's do something funny so you don't lose interest. Anyway, Moses then goes to Egypt and speaks to Pharaoh and tells him to let the Israelites go, but the Pharaoh refuses, so God sends plague after plague. All the plagues, by the way, match one of the biggest gods in Egyptian culture. So, for example, Khnum was the guardian of the Nile, and God turned the Nile into blood. What? I can't say her name, but she was the fertility goddess, and she was always pictured as a frog, and God sent a plague of frogs. None of that is to say that I don't think it happened, I do. Simply that I believe that God works within the culture of the time. God is relational. Then we get the Passover, which is incredibly important in the overarching story of the Bible. God is going to kill all the firstborn, but he tells the Israelites to kill a lamb and to paint the blood on the doorposts, and then he will pass over those houses. So the lamb dies so they don't have to. Hey Christians, does that sound familiar? Pharaoh eventually agrees to let them go, so they head off quickly before he changes his mind, which of course he does, so they get trapped between the Pharaoh's army and the Red Sea, and it's at that point that God parts the Red Sea and they're able to go through into freedom. That leads into what is clearly the second half of the book of Exodus, which happens after God has freed them from slavery. And it's incredibly important we grasp this, because God hasn't just freed them to do whatever, but to be his people and to live in relationship with him. And it's in this context that God gives them the law, most famously the 10 Commandments. And And the context is important because the Ten Commandments are, do this or I'll get really cross and smite you. No, they are, I've rescued you. You've seen that I love you. You've seen that I've already saved you. Now trust me, this is what will be best for you. And yet the people repeatedly showed that they won't listen, most notably in the golden calf, building a new god to worship, and yet God still sticks with them. Also get the building of the ark, which is vitally important because then you can have Indiana Jones.
Do 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 do. Do 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 do.
And we're done. The book of Exodus in 5 minutes. Bob, by the way, is still here and he's now got a partner, but this is a mark from my daughter. My daughter scratched me in the face. That's what happens when you got 2-year-olds.